let's just work along the panel. Do you want to introduce yourself and just give us one sentence? Why is there so much goddamn buzz about retail media here in Cannes 2025? Go.
Hi, everybody. I am Joe Maceda. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Mindshare in the US. One sentence, why there is so much buzz about it. Number one, I think as it is expanding, more and more categories are just realizing that there's that opportunity that they haven't been able to get in the DTC world. Number two, perhaps more importantly, I think everyone is realizing that retail media is not just a channel, it is a audience definition and data source.
Creative use of semicolons.
Yes.
I think. We'll give you that.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean Ransenberg, and I lead retail media for HEB. HEB is the 5th largest privately held company in the U.S., and we're also the largest privately held grocery chain in the state of Texas. Why is retail media so important? I think it's, you look across the landscape, and do brands have an awareness problem, or do they have a consideration and a conversion problem? So that's what we'll talk about today.
Nice. Jen?
Hi, this is the most coordinated panel around, I think, right? We
That's
didn't
to
even
say.
plan it. Like, that's so great. Hi, I'm Jen Jensen. I'm at agency partnerships at Best Buy. I think for us, it's obviously we're the closest to the purchase, right? So it's so exciting from retail media, and there's so much innovation. Melanie just talked about it. So it's just an exciting space to be in.
Cool. You're still Melanie Zimmermann.
You're
still excited. Okay, I want to start with the big picture, okay? It won't escape anyone's attention that there's a lot of stuff happening in the advertising ecosystem. We've got CTV, identity at scale, AI inevitably, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Give us your sense, when you're thinking about a brand's strategy, how does retail media fit into all of those other options, that whole connected media ecosystem that brands are investing in? Search, CTV, the full Monty, social, UGC, TikTok, how does it all fit together in your mind?
I think,
simple, easy question to get the ball rolling.
Totally. It rolls right off the tongue. I think, like I said before, we're trying not to think of retail media as a channel anymore, and rather think about it as a data and audience underpinning of everything that we do. Right now, there's fantastic connectivity between retail media data and CTV, especially. But I think more and more we're going to see that same connection point and that same connection power across pretty much every channel. And so, as we're strategizing, we're seeing retail media, if you visualize it, running across the bottom or as a through line through pretty much every channel, not today, but in the next 2 to 3 years.
I'll just add to Joe's point. I think as you think about retail media is an opportunity for brands to connect with local communities in an authentic voice, a way that ultimately drives measurable results. And so just building on kind of Joe's point, it's this opportunity to really collaborate and partner with retailers to drive those measurable results.
Jen?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that retail media gets pinned in as just like sponsored products or performance. And I think, as Joe was saying, we go across the funnel. So starting to have different conversations rather than it just be on site, I think is going to be so important to not kind of take us out of that box, because I think that will open up a totally different conversations for brands.
Yeah, I love that point, particularly around the connected omnichannel experience we can create for the consumer and then also ultimately for the brands.
Okay, so that's roughly where it sits. Next question. Is this a mature category? Do you think we're just at the beginning of seeing spend move into it? Where's the next wave of commercial growth in terms of marketing investment going to come from? Why don't we start with you, Melanie, and then we'll work back down.
I talked about the fact that the honeymoon phase is over, but also the retailers are in different stages. I think there are some that are really entering this space and often are approaching it as an opportunity to modernize their trade activity. I think often I see retailers thinking through how do I really pivot above and beyond, because as excited as they are to bring more accountability and transparency to their practices with their direct brands, as much do they fear the cannibalization of other spend. And so ultimately all of us want to grow and want to achieve more. And I think that's where what has worked for the big players may not as easily work for other retailers in the ecosystem. And as I mentioned earlier, there are still a lot of low-hanging fruits in terms of late mover advantages, leveraging what has been already proven. So take conquesting as an example. And we talked about sponsored products, it's been around for a long time, but look at the practices of retailers in sponsored products and compare them to some of the bigger players. The bigger players have moved to conquesting, the other retailers are still evaluating, moving there. And so I think there are a tremendous amount of differences when you look at under the hood of what's going on within retail media. And so I think that's why I come back to this theme of modernizing retail media, because there are truly some low-hanging fruits where things are already proven, but we need to extend some of these best practices into the rest of retail. And then also be doing more than just, oh, me too, I now can do this as well. What's special, what's unique. And I think that's where the retailers can shine, particularly category leaders, in their deep knowledge of the customer and creating something really special.
Jen, how do you think about it? Do you look at the Best Buy offering and think, this is pretty mature, we're kind of running out of road? Or do you sit there thinking, we're right at the beginning of this, we have a long way and a lot of opportunity ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we're right at the beginning. I think the cool part, I mean, there's over 250 retail media or plus, right? And so you have to start figuring out how are you going to continue to innovate. And for us, I mean, our data is so important. I mean, we have a 93% identification rate to customers. And so when you start to think about the power of our data, and you can keep evolving it. We want to do more partnerships. We want to find different ways for advertisers to want to connect. So for us, it's continue to stay in front, innovate, get the places that our advertisers are wanting us to leverage our data differently.
So
I was just going to say, from our side, when we think about the maturity of retail media, I really think about it in two lenses. The first is measurement. Where are we at from a maturity lens of measurement? I think as we think about this idea of standardization and measurement in retail media, we have to bring all parties to the table. We have to bring brands to the table, the tech partners to the table, and retailers to be able to have this conversation. When we talk with brands, it's very difficult because all the different stakeholders inside a single manufacturer will have different desires for what they want to measure and how they want to measure it. So measurement is definitely one area. I think there's still a lot of growth potential for retail media. The second area we think about is, you look at the site or the app and the number of ad placements or ad load, right? I think that will continue to change as we continue to evolve.
So, Joe, I want to pick up on something Jen said when she talked about data. Obviously, you work with, I'm guessing, lots of retail media networks. What are best-in-class networks doing with data that really makes them stand out?
They are making it open. They are just not saying, here's the data, buy on my platform. They are saying, here is my audience. These are the people, these are the customers that are shopping at my retailer. Let's go out and find them together. And doing that in a privacy safe way makes it basically absolutely perfect for us to go and find those people where we need to find them, as opposed to just in that shopper. To Jen's point, it doesn't then just have to be a conversion driving tactic. It's not just lower funnel. It is whatever we need to do across the full brand objectives.
Same question, Melanie. I mean, you obviously see a lot of different networks. What are the real market leaders doing with data which differentiates them?
I think I see a lot of test and learn activity, particularly when it comes to offsite. I don't think that there's just one mode. I think when it comes to sponsored products, everyone knows how to buy that. As soon as you go into offsite, things are getting really interesting. I think there's continues to be a significant role of managed services in this space, but then also this curiosity on how do you extend your audiences into other platforms. At Criteo, we have this product called Curation, where we use our SSP in order to help retailers curate audiences and make them accessible in the DSP platforms of choice of various agency partners. I think that gives advertisers flexibility so that they don't have to switch platforms. I think where I've seen struggles, if you go to a brand and say, hey, how about our audiences? While the retailer may value the audiences a lot, the brand may or may not be super excited about the retailer audiences. If you then add additional barriers on top of it, switching platforms, it makes it even harder. And so I'm a firm believer in ultimately meeting the buyers where they are. And so if they want to if they're looking for a service model, then managed services works really well. But if they're professional programmatic media buyer, the chances are they want to activate in the DSP of their choice and then utilize the retailer's audiences. But it may not be just a single retailer audience, because as great as the precision of the single retailer audience is, there's often a lack of scale, and often the advertisers are looking to utilize multiple strategies. And so I think that's where really curation can be a great strategy to ultimately give the media buyers flexibility while also meeting the needs of the retailer to keep their data protected. I see a lot of fragmentation in the industry where retailers are putting their audiences into a bunch of different marketplaces, and I'm a bit worried, to be clear, on the commoditization of retailers' valuable data if they just put the data anywhere. But I think there's a nice middle ground we can find as an industry that protects the data as a valuable asset of the retailer while simultaneously extending it into the right environments for activation.
So Jen, Joe thinks the best retail media networks are distinguished by the openness they have with their data. Are you open with your data? Wow.
Well, no, so I think there's lots of ways that we can look at our data, right? I think Melanie just said it. I mean, you want to be able to offer the right audiences to the clients, but you also have to protect it. So I think there's ways that we can talk about, like, what are you trying to achieve? What does the client want to achieve? Look at our audiences. I mean, we have over 200 million in our database, right? So we're going to be able to slice it and find ways to really reach and accomplish what you want while protecting it at the same time. I think it's just this fine line, I think, that you have to play as in the retail media space.
And I always think it's interesting, in the media space, companies have data, but as a retailer like Best Buy, you have big data. I mean, you have billions of interactions with thousands of items across millions of shopping experiences. It's a lot to play with, right? You can do a lot of very cool stuff.
Yeah, I think, it's so exciting because we're also in this moment of like tech and culture, right? So you think about places that are the most exciting. So we have fall football is a huge one. So we drive a lot. We have sports fans, right? And so they want to come to Best Buy. They want to upgrade their TVs. We also know back to school, we're a destination for laptops. And then we have, this little thing called the Switch that was just launched. And in 8 years, we haven't had lines at Best Buy. And we had people waiting in line.
Wow.
So you start to think about these big moments with our data. You can just start to really reach audiences in much different places. But I don't think everyone always thinks of Best Buy in that way, of these like big cultural moments layered with our data. There's just so much that we can do to reach those really unique customers.
So you mentioned lines. Let's move on and talk about the shopper experience. Do you think retail media is ultimately going to improve the consumer's experience of shopping? Are there clever, innovative ways of bringing together different channels, in-store and digital, mobile, whatever, to really give consumers something special and different when they embark on a shopping journey that leads to some purchase? Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I think from a retail media and in-store perspective, we have a lot of debates internally about what is the ideal customer experience. And I think as we laid out our foundational principles for retail media inside of HEB, we said we are here to ultimately enhance the customer experience. What that means is as we create an omni-channel platform, we need to ensure that we're ultimately showing our customers the same creative, both offsite, on-site, and in-store, and bringing that holistic experience together. And I think that's where there's a big opportunity for retailers holistically, is really enhancing that customer experience and protecting that overall omni-channel experience.
And just make it real. Give me an example. I'm a shopper. I wander into a retailer. What's going to look better or different for me if a retailer is really making those channels sing together?
I'm happy to take it. I don't know if anybody in this group has been to an HEB during Christmas, but it's a special experience. And so you come around and you just feel the holidays. You feel that essence. And so I think as we bring that holistic experience together, it's feeling that experience online. It's feeling it when you're on social. It's feeling it both in-store and online. So,
Jen?
Yeah, so we have lots of screens, obviously, in our stores, right? So we can have advertising show up there. We can then create that experience online as well. So the idea would be that, especially we could have non-endemic or our endemic, so having just this more seamless experience across. And we have tons of touch points. So we have, even though we have online, 40% is picked up in our stores. So we have this different way of when they're coming in and they're looking at their phone, you can serve them an ad in the app. So we have just all all this full customer journey that we can ensure that we're being really consistent in how we're showing up to the customer. And we're also trying to do things where we're trying to really personalize the experience online. And we have AI powered, we just launched this for search to be able to bring more natural search terms and how the customer's searching. So the idea is you just kind of connect it end to end.
Yeah, to add to that, I think if you think about the sort of history of brands and retail, shopper marketing's job has always been to bring the needs of the customer and the needs of the retailer together, and they've done that really successfully in the in-store experience. Retail media now just opens up another lever to do that in really, really impactful ways, and I think our commerce strategy teams think of it as just a rapidly expanding canvas of different things to pull. We had one client targeting teens who partnered with a retail media network and an anime producer to actually build content into the retail media experience at the point of purchase. So it was like, yeah, you get this thing that you were potentially looking to buy, but also this other thing that you wouldn't have even known existed. And I think that's what like really rich opportunities are.
I mean, that takes me on to the next topic I'd love to touch upon, which is how are best-in-class marketeers really capitalizing on the opportunities presented by all of this innovation? I mean, Joe, why don't you kick us off and then we'll work down the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to thinking of it as a new canvas. And I think the first thing, and Jen touched on this, is getting out of the pure endemic mindset. Like, I'm selling a TV, I will go and talk to Best Buy. I'm sure Jen will take that call, but
yes, always.
But she also wants to take lots of other calls because, to the previous points, there's experiences that can be made better by brands going into different spaces for both the brand, the retailer, and the customer.
Jumping on?
Yeah, so I think as we think about best-in-class customers and CPG partners and brand partners, it's those that really come to a market, right? I recognize that H-E-B, we're only in Texas, and we're a regional retailer. But if you think about the size of Texas, right, there's 30 million people just in the state of Texas. It represents an opportunity that's bigger than Australia as a country, right? And I think a lot of these brands have dedicated marketing teams for Australia. Why would we not think about specific regional efforts? And so as we talk with partners, it's how do you come down to the market and understand how do we communicate with these local communities in an authentic way? And so I think as we think about authentic and best-in-class partners, they really bring that to H-E-B.
Jen, what are the best marketers doing when they work with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we said it a little bit earlier, but it's like you have to just take retail media out of the box and really think about how you can leverage us differently. We also realize there's so many choices that they have, right? And so when you start to think about, like, what are you trying to accomplish, and between our data, our access, again, across the funnel, not just on site, that I think there's just so many different ways that they can start to leverage us. We really are more of like a media, right? And I think, you say that, but we're starting to show up in places that we can start to prove that.
Melanie, what are the best marketeers doing?
Loved all the points that you made. I would add that I see a lot of best-in-class marketeers on the brand side trying to unify data, not just for the point of staring at the data, but ultimately to take action on the data. And so I think that the ecosystem needs to think about like data availability into the broader ecosystem, which is a tricky subject because retailers simultaneously want to protect the data because it's such a strategic advantage. That being said, if they want to be considered in the planning tools of agencies, data needs to be, at least some consideration has to be given to making data show up in those agency planning tools. Otherwise, you're missing the planning cycle, and then you're not going to be like at the table. Does that make sense? Because I think the retailers have an opportunity to think more about how planning cycles working for those brand buyers and marketeers, not just how is my JBP trade negotiation working. Does that make sense? You need to, but also let me be clear, it's not one or the other. In order to get your full potential, you need to master both.
Just to build on that point, right? How do we bring everybody to the table, right? The brand teams, e-commerce teams, the agencies, all sit down with the retailers and the merchandising team to talk about how do we do this holistically.
Okay, let's try and end on a kumbaya moment. At SIM, we are great believers that effective collaboration can drive meaningful change. In the retail media category, where do you see opportunities for cooperation, collaboration, standardization to drive growth in the entire category? What's the rising tide that working together, you can help to move all the ships in the same direction, upwards? Do you want to kick us off? Probably not.
Yeah, no, not really, because that's the most challenging question you've asked thus far. I hate to say standardization, but standardization of measurement and applying industry-wide best practices is probably the biggest.
Silly question. Is standardization of measurement feasible? Is it a realistic goal to aim for? Or actually, is it just very challenging?
And any goal is worth reaching for. Is it achievable?
I think it is. It's not that hard. I mean, sorry for jumping in.
Go for it.
I mean, like the industry. What kills me is the industry has been talking about standardization for a long time. We can certainly strive to standardize everything, but let's start somewhere, right? Like even like just the basics of what's your ROAS attribution window. Well, by the way, I don't believe that it should be just one. If you buy a fridge, it's different than if you buy a chocolate bar, right? So I think it should be the right window of attribution for the advertiser, and so the advertiser should be in control, but then the attribution should be handled by a third party that is neutral, that can ensure that the attribution is done consistently. I think where we get in trouble is when every retailer with good intentions is trying to do all the attribution themselves, because then it's like a black box and you grade your own homework. So I think in order to drive greater trust and standardization, unification in the ecosystem, there needs to be the right type of partnership to make that happen.
Yeah, I'll just add, media measurement as a whole, I think we just have to acknowledge is challenging, right? I'll share with you, we did a survey with our top 100 suppliers, and we asked a number of different constituents in each one of our suppliers, how do you want to measure your retail media? And we gave them 6 options. Wouldn't believe it, but the results we got back were basically equal distribution across all 6 options. It's very challenging, right? And so we have to work together, all brands internally, retailers, agencies, and tech partners all have to come together if we're going to make this happen.
Jen, a final word. Do you want to get in a huddle with Walmart and Target and all these other guys and make some meaningful progress together? What would you like to focus on if you could do that?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing we talked about is like standardization. I'm not exactly sure about Walmart and Target, but you think that there's so many retail media networks, right? So there's got to be synergies that we can find across others, maybe that are not competitive. But I think we have so much opportunity for sure, and I think that's the exciting part, because if we don't start to create some standardization, right, like with so many of us out there, marketers aren't going to want to choose retail media, and so I think we have to work, differently together to do that.
Let's end on a hopeful note, then. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.